Welcome to Pholia Farm. You're inside our barn today, and I'm going to have a lot of audio bombing going on by these goats, but hopefully that will be a pleasant interruption. I'm standing here by our mineral buffet, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, about letting your animals, and it could be goats, cattle, sheep, all of them, can choose what they need for themselves. It takes a little adjustment for your herd or whatever you have, flock, but they can do it. So I'm going to go over some of those things. If you have my book, Holistic Goat Care, and even if you don't, you can Google it or whatever search engine you use and find a mineral interaction wheel. These are a really important reminder of the interplay of all the micro and macronutrients. They all work together or against each other in many cases. And you can have an imbalance in your soil fertility or your soils, your feeds that you're buying, and then of course differences in those animals themselves. And there's water also in that. So all of these things supply an input of nutrients, these micronutrients, that you aren't necessarily going to be aware of. Now in nature, of course, the animal would go out there and find what they need. A salt lick somewhere, eating more of one plant that has a higher nutrient content than another. And when I'm saying nutrients throughout this session, I'm talking about minerals and vitamins. So they would seek those out. They would have to range far and wide to do that. And of course, depending on where your species developed, whether it was grasslands for cattle, intermediate types of ranges for sheep, or those browse situations with scrubby shrubs and trees for goats, that if they have their ideal environment, they're more likely to find what nature designed them to need. But none of us usually can provide that. So how can you make it easy on yourself? Because believe me, when you read about the nutrient requirements and you see that wheel, and then you start factoring in, oh, in one herd I've got goats, we'll just talk about goats, of different ages. I have some that are pregnant, some that are milking, some that are retired, some that are babies. All their needs are going to be different. One thing I like to use as an analogy is prenatal vitamins. I am almost 60. If I wanted to take vitamins, I would not choose prenatal vitamins. But so if you've got a herd of mixed ages and requirements, and then even it's been proven with dairy cattle or cattle that different breeds have different requirements. And it's known that different coat colors have different requirements. So how can you do that? You start thinking about all that and you think there's no way. I can't keep these animals healthy. This solves all that. So it sounds like the complicated way to do things, but it's really the easy way. If you read what academics write about animals and something called nutritional wisdom, you will find, and this is true, that they've only proven that they have nutritional wisdom for a couple of the nutrients. But every farmer that uses this approach, and there are many, many organic beef producers and dairy producers in particular that use this approach as a way to help the animal stay so healthy that you don't need to use those drugs on them, that you cannot use and maintain your organic standards. So those farmers will tell you that they see over time how the animals do take care of themselves. Now I started doing this in very first day of 2015. And what I did is every year for 4 or 5 years, I kept a detailed calendar of what I had to add to this buffet. Now on the mineral wheel is on page 82, if you have the book. And on page 80, you will see a picture of how our system is set up here and another person's system. But what I did is I label each of these little divided containers by their element sign, like potassium is K. You have to learn those if you want to label it this way. And then I just use that single or 2-letter abbreviation or designation on the calendar for what I added more on that day. And I did that for that many years. Then in addition to that, and I talk about this in the book, I had a liver biopsy. I took a liver biopsy, a liver sample from a healthy animal that I either butchered or had died suddenly, and sent it off for mineral analysis. So this is the only way to truly verify what those heavy trace minerals, the ones that are toxic in too many amounts, and of course any nutrient is. Here's a little baby goat learning how to take what she needs. Anyway, any of those are toxic and too much. So how do you tell if they're not eating too much? The liver biopsy is really your confirmation of that process. And while I'm not a scientist, your farm is a lab of sorts. If you're going to observe, document, and then verify what you're doing. And it adds up to, like I said, less cost. This is them taking great care of themselves. So I saw a lot of initial intake of certain nutrients that then went away. And then I only repurchased and kept refilling. And when I say refill, I only put a little bit out at a time, because goats in particular are very picky and they will not take it in if it's dirty. You may have seen on that note these little flaps here. These are pieces of vinyl strip curtain that the goat has to put their head through. So what that does is it keeps some poo from falling in there, and however they do it, they still sometimes get stuff in there. Particularly when you have kids in the pen also, because they're going to put their feet through here. So you need to monitor whatever mineral feeder system and watering source you have. And our water is on the other side here, alongside a loose mixed mineral and baking soda for those buffers that the goats need, cows and sheep also. So having them on the outside of the pen lets me check it every single day, make sure it's clean, and make sure it is available for them when they need it. On that note, you need to have this buffet accessible 24/7 to all of the herd. So if you have a separate pen with some pregnant goats in it or juniors, they need to have something like this too. So, and then within whatever pen you're using, you can't have it in a place where the lowest member of the herd, the lowest one down that pecking order, you can't have it where they would be afraid to take it in. So make sure it's accessible. When you buy these, you're going to have, really there's only one company that provides all of them. There are a couple of companies that have some bags like a phosphorus or other certain blends like that. But there's one company where I recommend you guys start with, because they make it easy and relatively affordable. And that's Advanced Biological Concepts, ABC. Now, they have a starter kit that you can order, and shipping is expensive, but it's going to last you a long time. Particularly if it keeps them healthy, it's going to be worth that investment. And then, like I said, you can only buy replacements of what they use over a whole year's period. So what I did is I bought the 15 mineral starter kit, put all 15 out, and I used to have more trays here. Then over that year and into the second year, I found that they didn't touch some of them at all, ever. That was over the whole spectrum of bucks, juniors, pregnant does, retired does, lactating does. So given that, I'm assuming that our environment here, their forage and feed that they have, is providing that. So I keep putting it out. That's how I approach it. So the rest of them that they use regularly, I just bought a bunch of little individual tubs with a dispenser top. And then I labeled them. And I labeled them with their full name and their descriptive designation, like zinc, ZN for zinc. And then I keep those, when I get the bags of minerals, I put them in there. Now, ABC is going to send you these minerals in 5 to 10 pound bags in the starter kit. Then what I go through a lot of, I'll buy a 25 pound bag to keep going for the year. Luckily, minerals are going to be stable. They're not like vitamins, and the vitamins content is going to change in feedstuffs over time. So luckily that part of it is stable. Now, these are not just straight zinc or straight potassium. They are a blend, but the most featured nutrient is going to be what it's named after. On that note, however, many of us do use straight, like copper sulfate. Now please read up on this. I have a section in the book about people whose goats have died because they ate too much of it and killed themselves. Many of us use it though quite successfully. Then it's very easy to get, that's baby buck talk if you can hear that. Sounds like a bird. There's a little buck out there that just thinks he's so hot. Anyway, copper sulfate, sulfur, several other things that you can do that way. If you use this approach, you also want to provide plain salt. And I also have a sulfur block here, which you can't see in the picture. In addition to this buffet, what I provide, and this is not part of the ABC kit, is bentonite. So it's a food grade bentonite, Bighorn brand, cheap bentonite clay. The goats will eat it when they have some sort of toxin being produced by whatever they ate. So the toxin could be in the feed, or it could be being produced by fungi and in the feed. They will eat the bentonite and that absorbs those toxins. So it's a really cheap, great way to help hedge your bets. And this tray of bentonite here, some days we'll go days in a row with filling it twice a day. Then others were nothing for days and days. So it's a good thing to have available when they need it. The other thing you'll get in the ABC kit is called GRP, Glyphosate Remediation Product. So if you can't feed organic hay and you believe or you know that your farmer is using glyphosate, aka Roundup, this product is supposed to help neutralize that in their system before they absorb it. So, and residues are absorbed in everybody, of course. Then the other thing you're going to have out are your buffers, sodium bicarbonate, aka baking soda, so that goat, cow, sheep, whatever, can add that buffering compound when their rumen is too acidic. The rumen gets too acidic, it doesn't work well. And it will favor microbes that could take over. And then the animal can become in a chronic state of acidosis, which is going to reduce productivity, overall health, hardiness, everything. So the goat is not, none of these ruminants are meant to eat much grain. And for those of us that feed a little bit of grain, or some people that feed more grain, that is a really good thing to have. And even when you don't have that, if they're not ruminating a lot for whatever reason, the saliva that they add to that cud is going to neutralize. It has a lot of buffers in it. So whatever might stop them from ruminating a lot may be the cause of the acidosis versus what you fed them. So those are all important things to do with that. So if you try this system, and I obviously highly recommend it, you can let the herd get accustomed to it slowly. Put out just a little bit of everything. Then try to make sure all of the herd gets to pass through it, buy it, have it somewhere where it's easy for them to find, and then watch them, see how they try it. Particularly if you're going to try something as extreme as the straight copper sulfate. You don't want to put much out ever, just in case. Let me remind you of your environment and the soils. So the soils that the hay is grown on, the soils the grain's grown on, the soils your pasture is on. It's going to have a different mineral balance throughout the United States, throughout the region, even in a county, it's going to be different. Here in our area, Southern Oregon, there's a high molybdenum content in the soil. And the feed studies, in my book I have a picture of that liver analysis as well as feed analysis. And you'll see in the feed analysis that the ratio of molybdenum to copper is off. Now molybdenum is one of the best, or the strongest, antagonists for copper, meaning it's going to block its absorption. So your regular mixed mineral that you're going to buy for your goats, and it's going to be a good brand, I'm sure, whether that's Purina, Sweet Licks, Calf Mana, any of those, they're going to be formulated to meet a basic need for a huge population of animals across the country. But just understand that there's this unseen interplay going on between all these nutrients, and it changes all the time, and it's going to change so site specific. So this is a way to address that. So if you do it, track it, confirm your treatment of them, your feed this way, through that litter biopsy if at all possible. Learn to observe, and you should do that anyway. If you've read my book, you know that I am a great believer in observing the herd health, looking for all those signs that tell you they have a need. Their signs are there on the outside of what's going on inside. And thank you for joining us here at Pholia Farm.